Good morning, Accotink.
Good morning.
I hope everyone is enjoying this beautiful day. My name is Nancy Melito. I am your worship associate today. Whether you're joining in person or online, let us take a moment to center ourselves for worship. We open in welcome to the ancestral peoples of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomac Indian tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. Accotink UU Church is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and compassionate world through our actions to bring about justice and by honoring the web of nature of which we are a part. All are welcome here, no matter whom you love, no matter your identity or heritage, no matter your beliefs or background, no matter your means or abilities. You are welcome here in this religious community. If you're new to Accotink and would like to talk more about this church, look around. Anyone with a cross-stitch name tag is a member and would be happy to share with you about this congregation and how you may join us on our journey. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour immediately after this service, where there will be coffee. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome. Our minister, Reverend William Levewood, is here most Sundays, but today is on study leave. He will be back the second week of August. Today, we are very lucky to have the UU for Social Justice Executive Director, Pablo DeJesús, joining us as our guest in the pulpit. Thank you. Pablo DeJesús has a background in government affairs, having served in the office of the Governor of Puerto Rico, first at its planning board in San Juan, then at the Federal Affairs Administration in Washington, D.C. Immediately before joining UUSJ, Pablo consulted with CBOs, CBO?
Community-based organizations.
Thank you. Community-based organizations and nonprofits in New York and New Jersey, and worked on issue campaigns in Maryland and Colorado. He's worked on issues such as Vieques, economic development, HIV/AIDS, Medicaid, Medicare, Headstart, census errors, Maryland's Marriage Equality and Dream Act, Fracking, Reproductive Rights, Immigration, Arts and Culture, and school partnerships. So I think he's kind of qualified to be head of the UUSJ.
Yes.
Pablo holds a master's in social policy from the University of Maryland School of Public Policy and a BA from Oberlin College. Okay, got alumni out here. He's also a public policy and international affairs fellow and a member of All Souls Church, our Unitarian church in Washington, D.C.
My name is Michelle Anderson, and I am your Children and Youth Spiritual Development Director, and I am excited to share a story with you today. I know it's been a while since I've done that. This story is called Vote for Our Future. Every 2 years, on the Tuesday after the first Monday of November, Stanton Elementary School closes for the day. For repairs? Nope. For a holiday? Nuh-uh. For vacation? Not in November. But Stanton Elementary School closes for Election Day and changes from a school to a polling station. Now, what's a polling station? A polling station is where people vote. The reason people vote is to choose who makes the laws of the country. We should all vote, said LaToya. We should all vote to make the future better. But we can't vote until we turn 18, said Lizzie. So, what can we do? The kids of Stanton Elementary School did their research. They looked in books and made notes. They went online and found all kinds of information. They even took a trip to their local election office and picked up forms. I can't wait until I can vote for real, said Amal. Me either, said everybody else. Kids have to live with adult choices. Sometimes you don't like them, do you? Sometimes we don't like them either. The kids of Stanton Elementary School were ready to spread the word. Katie and her mom made flyers and handed them out. Don't forget to vote, Katie told one busy dad. I didn't even know there was an election, he said. Now you do, said Katie. Can I go with you when you vote? Jasmine asked her big sister. It's a pain to vote, her sister said. I'm not even registered, added her friend. It's not hard to register, said Jasmine. We can do it together. I can show you how. Nadia and her auntie went door to door. Voting is a right, Nadia said. A right that women didn't have 100 years ago. One lady told them, I don't like standing in line. I don't like lines either, answered Nadia's auntie. But if we stand in line for coffee, or for a movie, or at the bank, I bet we can stand in line to vote, said Nadia. Said the lady. Maybe we can. At Jaden's house, the whole family was making their voting plans. Jaden's dad was voting before work. Jaden's mom was voting after work. I've walked to that polling station every election since I could vote, Jaden's great-grand told him. But I can't walk so far anymore. A volunteer can drive you, said Jaden. Let's get you set up, said Jaden's mom. Mia and Noah and Jamal had a bake sale. Somebody else is having a bake sale. Don't forget to vote, Mia said as she handed out change. I'll be away on election day, said one woman. In our state, you can vote early, said Mia. Or you can vote by mail, said Jamal. The voter guide tells you how. Voting, what's the big deal? Asked a teenager. People fought wars so that we can vote, said Mia. That's a big deal. Why should I vote? Said a sad lady. Nothing ever changes. Besides, one vote won't make the difference. Are you kidding? Asked Jamal. Changes are made every day because people voted. Read this with me. Every vote counts. Say it again. Every vote counts. And one more time. Every vote counts. By the time it was the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November, every kid at Stanton Elementary had spread the word to their families, to their neighbors, to friends, to strangers, to friends of strangers. The whole town had a voting plan. And on election day, voters came early in the morning before the sun was up. They waited in line with coffee. They rolled in on wheelchairs. They voted for the first time and for the 50th time. They ran in at the last minute. They came with their sons and daughters, their nieces and nephews, their brothers and sisters, their cousins and friends. On the first Wednesday after the first Monday of November, all the votes had been counted. The results were so close, the votes had to be counted again. Some people won, and some people lost. But the laws of the country began to change. And Stanton Elementary went back to being a school. And the future began to change. So thank you for voting.
For you are the wind beneath my wings. Did I ever tell you you're my hero? You're everything, everything I wish I could be. Oh, and I could fly higher than an eagle. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wing. Fly, fly, fly high against the sky. You let me fly so high. Thank you, thank you. Thank God for you, the wind beneath my wings.
Good morning, Accotink. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I have to say that, you guys tend to get my apple cider vinegar with all the mother, because I come to you, I'm working thoughts out, but you get my most authentic, sort of deeply personally invested versions of sermons that other congregations get the more refined, and I figured out where all the trigger points are. But you guys get, I think, the most authentic version of my thoughts, and so I did request a little extra time to work through it. And after all, I sort of know you guys better than many congregations that I interact with. This summer marks 10 years with UUSJ, and you guys have been a consistent thread in my story and tenure with UUSJ. So again, it's good to be here with you and great to see you. Last fall, when I joined you, I spoke about belonging and the times of democratic trial we had entered. And in a foundational way, my comments today are not different. I think the United States is in a democratic crisis. Our society is moving toward a conflict between social movements like we have not seen in generations. Some of our elders remember these things, but the majority of Americans don't have an active memory of this kind of social conflict that's simmering. And the list of deplorables remains fairly consistent and worsening. Voting rights are under attack. I would argue they've been eviscerated. Political and state violence is increasingly normalized. Polarization continues to define our public discourse. Othering and scapegoating are rife. Marginalized communities face escalating threats of harm. Critically needed projects and programs are being defunded or reorganized. After more than a year of facing the fire hose of surprise, dismay, and tragedy, we've got to underscore ways to move beyond those horrors and into a space of imagining a better future, working forward and toward flourishing that we want, the flourishing we want to see. So when I was last with you, since I was last with you, I've continued to travel the country, meeting with Unitarian Universalists, offering sermons, providing training, leading thought circles, and carrying water in multi-faith spaces, helping our faith tradition be present in key ways. And I've had even more opportunities to work with folks of conscience in non-UU organizations, and in particular with UUs on the ground in key places like Minnesota. I've had many conversations about what has happened, what is going on, what we need to do in response, what are the tools we have at our disposal, and increasingly what should come next. To help us understand the importance of the accountability moment in November, the midterms, I want to try something that I saw one of my new friends in the work, Reverend Fletcher Harper of Green Faith, do in one of his sermons. I want us to use a thought experiment in slow motion to sort of showcase the stakes. So I want to ask you to imagine a small town in the Rust Belt, actually let's say Appalachia, since that's in the backyard for y'all here in Virginia. It's a town built around a factory and some related industry, perhaps textiles or coal. Let's say coal, because that's more familiar. Perhaps your parents came from such a place, or maybe you did. For generations, folks worked hard in that town, parents working the coal or working on an associated assembly line, grandparents with split shifts at a smattering of shops in support of the local industry, teens working at McDonald's and Dairy Queen, families cobbling together something they could hang a hat on as a job. Night shifts are a fact of life to make ends meet. Same for overtime. It's hard on the body. But a decent life is within reach with hard work and gumption. The kids grow up seeing their elders working hard, believing that if they worked hard, they would have a decent life too. There were sports teams and bowling leagues and social gatherings, churches for sure. Folks knew each other and knew each other's names. People were so close-knit, there was hardly a secret to be found anywhere in town. But then the coal work began to run out, and the supporting factories followed suit. The jobs moved away, rusted away almost overnight. Storefronts emptied, then shuttered. Folks started leaving. Fewer and fewer hours, hardly any work to be found for too many. A steady, reliable job was becoming a myth. And the local clinic closed. Now the nearest medical facilities are a good drive away, and fuel is getting more costly. Then the opioids came to town. Pills were supposed to help the rundown body, but they brought dependence, then addiction, the petty crimes, the family disruptions. Eventually, the funeral started. Just when the town was getting its feet under it, figuring out how to survive in these conditions, the weather events intensified. It had been, for a while, getting harder, but now something kicked in to a higher gear. Those once-in-a-generation storms now seem to come every 2 or 3 years. Streets and hollers flood like clockwork. Houses are destroyed regularly. Clothes, food, and vehicles are ruined. People who were barely hanging on, who had lost jobs and neighbors, are now losing their worldly possessions. Parishioners band together, but there's only so much that a church can do. The community and the local economy are bereft. This is not a fictional tale of woe. You know this. It's part of our United States. How can we turn a blind eye? These are federal policy choices playing out locally. Yet too many Americans hear stories like that and think, that's beyond me. And some even say things like, they earned it, or they're lazy. They just need to move on. What does our faith say about that? Let me tell you another story. A young woman growing up in Mayan territory, perhaps the Yucatan, perhaps Central America. Her parents are farmers. Her grandparents mind the home. The children are learning the ways of the people, of their people. Her older brothers now help with the heavy work. They cultivate traditional crops: maize, squash, beans, amaranth, chili, tomatillos, chaya, jamaica, manioc. They also gather zapotes and bread nut. They work the lands that their family and community have partnered for, in custodianship for generations. And they keep the ethos of the land as an extension of themselves. She loves to seed the soil. It's the perfect job for her deft fingers. It feels like beating the earth. She likes being at her mother's hip, even though she knows this will come to an end too soon. She's growing taller, at the cusp of full womanhood. But the rains stopped coming the way they used to. No amount of praying to the Virgin of Guadalupe changes that. None of the traditional folk ways are helping. One year, a hurricane destroys the crops and downs so many of the grandfather and grandmother trees. The next, a persistent drought threatens the little that remains. The crops are struggling to seed and replenish, to embrace the soil. Now, the regular rainfall causes bigger than usual mudslides. The yields are low, and the crops must be sold. So hunger blossoms like a beast in the middle of the community. It's mostly the manioc and the bread nut, with a flourish of corn, that have sustained them. They are in distress. Their community also. And then the gangs come, or the militias, hunting, wanting people. They take her brothers. To refuse them is to risk violent retaliation against the elderly and the youngest ones in the community. And living with these kidnappings rents the soul. Later, they hear that the gangs are now taking women, young women, even some of the older girls. So a family and a young woman now face an impossible choice: stay and gamble, wager against more kidnappings or violence, increasingly volatile weather, and dwindling food supply, or leave everything that's known and familiar. She kisses her grandparents goodbye and promises her parents she will find work as close as she can manage. The big towns and cities of the Highland Plateau are not too far away after all. She will come back when she can. And even though Spanish is her second language, she promises she will get by. She will figure it out. She will send money home. She begins a journey. She crosses valleys, fords rivers, exits the jungles, traverses the highlands, finds many like herself, more than she thought possible. Some have come from even further away. But there's no work to be found in the highlands, not within days or weeks of her home. They can hear work can be found al norte. She continues further and farther away with a band of young people and families, some with children and babies. Many are alone by themselves, especially the boys who the gangs did not grab, or the boys that got away from the militias. Into the desert, so different from her home, as far from the roads as possible they go. They hear bad things happen to people walking on the roads. They're looking for the border, not because she wants to, but because hunger, climate disruption, and violence have closed all other pathways to subsistence and survival. When she finally arrives at our border, she's denied, detained, and processed to a camp. The unfortunate reality is that too many Americans hear stories like this and think, well, that's what you get. And some chant much uglier things like no to illegals. None of the faith traditions that I know of encourage such attitudes or behavior. The Abrahamic traditions, where our faith was planted, focuses on justice, compassion, and mercy. Two stories, different geography, different social location, different specific moments in recent history, but they both beg us to ask, what kind of society do we want to be in response? Do we want our body politic to turn a blind eye and harden its heart? Are we to be a society that forgets people and places? Shall we turn away from our own faith, teachings, and covenants to do so? Similar forces are at play in both and behind both stories. Consequences beyond the control of the individuals in the story and the specific communities. Acts of God and nature, but worsened by human decisions, systems, and behaviors. Powers that use and abuse communities, powers that treat people as disposable commodities, powers that see only the prospect of wealth generation, powers that oppress and repress without care. Ideologues who preach society exists not to care for people, but to expedite the appetites of the fortunate. Ideologues who evangelize indifference and hate. Extract labor, extract land, extract lives, scapegoat, other, blame, and demonize. When such powers and ideologies pervade our society, our common and universal humanity is threatened. Every generation must decide what kind of civilization it will build, what type of society it will sustain. That is why we must remember a simple truth our faith teaches: the inherent worth and dignity of all people. But to hold that as part of our covenant, we must prove with our actions that love, compassion, and mercy are stronger powers. If the future belongs to those who build justice, then we must claim it together. Let us be clear-eyed and candid. The United States did not abruptly become unjust this year under this regime, with this leadership cabal. All our recent presidents have advanced policies that run counter to our faith teachings and traditions. Our country has a persistent habit of perpetrating unjust policies and refusing to learn from the mistakes, willfully ignoring the root causes and root harms. We harbor deep wounds and distasteful blemishes in our experiment of democracy. Poverty in the richest country on the planet, perhaps in history. Racial injustice and a shadow caste system enforced by the invisible hand of the market and educational spending and high incarceration rates. Ginned up wars and military interventionism in support of mercantilist and hegemonic impulses. Lack of parity between the sexes and the genders. Episodes of theocratic and eugenic social norms. Have we ever really escaped the clutches of white Christian nationalism? Since at least the 80s, we've fed our national zeitgeist on a steady junk food diet of rugged individualism, meism, and blame the victim. And we've washed it down with a frosty glass of Starve the Beast, plus a chaser of Trickle Down. Meanwhile, families struggle to find work, struggle to afford health care, struggle to put food on the table, fail to see the value of education. Meanwhile, the strife and volatility abroad have a cascade of impacts, and the consequences boomerang back. Meanwhile, our planet is groaning from decades of fossil fuel dependence, and our ecosystems are shrieking in alarm about the tipping points. The themes woven in these stories are not new to us in the United States. This past year especially, we've seen the policies and rhetoric of indifference and injustice lifted on high and praised like a new theology. It's being normalized, and a new equilibrium point is being set. It's being celebrated. Golden calf solutions are being leveraged against real systemic problems. We're told that compassion, mercy, and community care are deficiencies, that they encourage dependency. This is a rejection of the spirit of love. We're told that immigrants, asylum seekers, and refugees threaten our security. This is a rejection of the spirit of life. We're told that care for our golden, good green earth constrains growth, progress, and abundance. This is a rejection of the spirit of interdependence. We're told that might makes right and profit is the imperative. This is a rejection of the spirit of justice. Every faith tradition I'm aware of rejects those as lies. The Jewish instruction is to protect, love, and not oppress the stranger. Gur appears 36 times in the Torah. The sentiment is pretty clear that every human being, regardless of legal status, nationality, or ethnicity, is created in the image and likeness of God. Genesis 1:27. You shall love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy 10:19. If there is among you anyone in need, do not be hard-hearted. Again, Deuteronomy 15:7. And teach that you shall open your hand to the poor and the needy. Christians follow teachings of Jesus and develop them as further theological concepts, such as Imago Dei, the Good Samaritan. The neighbor goes beyond geographic, national, and religious boundaries, but by whoever shows mercy to someone in crisis. Luke 10. Or the borderless kingdom. There is no longer Jew or Greek, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus. Galatians 3:28. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was sick, and you took care of me. Matthew 25:35. Islam cherishes hijrah, the universal right to migrate. The Quran explicitly condemns staying in a land where one is being oppressed if migration is possible. The Aman, asylum and protection, the absolute obligation of protection. If a non-Muslim seeks asylum or safe passage in Muslim territory, Muslims are religiously obligated to grant it. Actually, Islam goes a little further, which makes sense given its actual history, and encourages immigrants, those who leave their homes due to oppression, poverty, or religious persecution. Quran 4:100. Or praising the Ansar, those who welcome, house, or share their wealth with the incoming migrants. The Quran 59:9. The Quran also reminds believers to give food despite love for it to the needy, the orphan, and the captive. Did you hear that? Protect, love, good, sick, every human being, regardless of legal status, not to oppress. You are the one. Universal right, absolute obligation, asylum, poverty, persecution, welcome, house, share. Yet we ask the needy to feed themselves on $6.17 a day, and we separate families in detention. Yes, those are things that past U.S. leadership have done, and more. And now, since H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, has passed, we're making it harder to participate and qualify in public programs. Plus, we've supercharged a draconian abusive enforcement regime. Also, we've repealed all the good parts of the Inflation Reduction Act while doubling down on many of the nefarious elements, all while affecting a huge wealth transfer to billionaires. And we've repeated the behavior with a second reconciliation, and a third is being contemplated. Yet we are Americans. We do look to the horizon. We do cherish the prospect of a brighter future. And we are Unitarian Universalists. We believe we can bend the moral arc of the universe towards justice. And while this past year has been discouraging, heartbreaking, and bitter, and our society is repeatedly making choices that conflict with our faith teachings and our covenants, we must not ignore the harms. We've got to get moving, get dreaming, and preparing to bend that arc. This past spring, UUSJ helped launch the Covenant for Our Future, a national multi-faith campaign that meets this moment with moral clarity and collective commitment. United across faith traditions, the campaign calls for the repeal of H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and a renewal of our federal government's commitment to compassion and justice. We're guided in that project by sacred teachings, and we're calling for policies that uphold economic dignity and health care for all, racial justice and peace building, migrant rights, climate justice and a clean energy economy, and global solidarity for the human good. This is our response to the cries from our community, not with rhetoric, but with life-giving action. We identified H.R. 1 as a highly symbolic measure and emblematic of the indifference, but also as a root harm for the abuse and the violence that we're experiencing with ICE and CBP and the shedding of social safety net services in healthcare and SNAP and the shuttering of needed projects, and especially the defunding of environmental justice community investments. In our campaign launch report, we say, even before the policy changes brought to bear by H.R. 1, the warning signs were clear. Nearly 42 million people already relied on SNAP to afford basic groceries. 1 in 5 adults, 100 million Americans, were burdened with medical debt. More than 25 million Americans lacked health insurance at some point each year. For millions of Americans, we are one emergency away from a financial collapse of the household. H.R. 1 has moved us in the wrong direction. Separately, the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities said the law redistributes trillions of dollars upward over the next decade through its combination of tax cuts skewed to the wealthy, disproportionately white people, and cuts in food assistance and health coverage. On the matter of SNAP, they say that states are shedding SNAP beneficiaries in advance of H.R. 1's scheduled cost shift to the states. SNAP participation has already fallen by more than 4.5 million people. More than 1.5 million children will likely lose access based on the available data, and as many as 35 states and 1 U.S. territory will be required to pay substantial new costs to continue participating. I know you guys have a rich history of doing food pantry work. You can't fill this gap. H.R. 1 will take Medicaid coverage away from millions of people for not meeting rigid work requirements. Many will actually be Medicaid eligible because they either worked the required hours or were exempt for legitimate reasons like caregiving or having serious medical conditions, but they will lose coverage due to reporting burdens and red tape. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation ran the numbers, and they found that between 4.9 and 10.1 million people will lose Medicaid coverage in 2028 due to work requirements and more frequent eligibility checks. And between 19 and 37% of people who already work will nevertheless lose Medicaid coverage, including some who are meeting the work requirements but would face challenges documenting their work activity properly. The Center for American Progress did similar analysis. They found that the average monthly net premium costs among marketplace enrollees increased by 58% from 2025 to 2026. The ACA plans signups fell by 5%, or 1.2 million people during that 2026 enrollment period. 41 states saw a decline in 2026 in their marketplace plan selections. Even the Rand Institute Corporation, I forget which one they are, even Rand estimates that across the provisions, an estimated 7.6 million fewer Medicaid enrollees are expected by 2034. On immigration, H.R. 1 gave billions to expand ICE and CBP and DHS enforcement operations for a 400% increase in detention funding alone, enabling rapid growth of a vast new detention infrastructure. With those funds, ICE has killed 4 people just this year: Johan, Lorenzo, Alex, Renee. Yesterday was a day of action for Lorenzo and Johan. 22 people have died while in ICE custody. Jesus Manuel Arenas Silva was the most recent that I know of. I'm not checking these numbers every single day. And we know that altogether at least 50 people have died in ICE custody during Trump's second term. The proliferation of detention facilities, both formal and informal, is expanding capacity to levels unseen in our history, spreading complicity among communities that have never been involved in federal enforcement. Localities are being alternately coerced or enticed into new 287G agreements. The Inflation Reduction Act was described as the largest federal climate legislation in U.S. history to date. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act has been characterized as its repeal. I mean, it's a more complicated story here since H.R. 1 preserved key transferability provisions and extended multiple credits through at least 2027, perhaps as late as 2029. And it's true, both fuel and energy prices are rising in part due to tariffs and the war. But what seems to be emerging is that H.R. 1 has incentivized the explosive proliferation of data centers because of growing AI demand. Hundreds of facilities are currently under construction, and the energy demand implications are staggering. In fact, the U.S. Department of Energy projects that by 2028, data centers alone will consume a full 12% of U.S. energy production. We've seen the growth and the planning for data centers with little or no regard to what communities want or the infrastructure burdens, let alone the toll on water and resources and air quality. Is it any surprise that data centers have become the spark for cross-party voter coalitions across the country during the primary period? You know this. You're at ground zero here in Virginia. Yet data centers aside, the ding on the U.S. clean energy sector is rather significant. $91 billion up front, followed by $55 billion in annual reductions in the U.S. gross domestic production. More than 200 major clean energy projects that aren't data centers have been canceled or downsized since Trump took office again, costing nearly 500,000 jobs and at least $55 billion in annual GDP. Separate modeling suggests that the large-scale clean energy manufacturing and generation projects canceled in the wake of the shift in energy policy have cost the future U.S. economy at least 468,000 jobs, including 343 permanent jobs and 125,000 construction jobs. That's a lot of jobs that we want and need. $12 billion in foregone annual tax revenue for federal, state, and local governments, in addition to $20 billion in lost tax revenues just from the construction activities themselves, $31 billion in lost annual wages for permanent workers. It need not be this way. We have done big things and good things in the past. We're capable of both little steps and impressive leaps towards beloved community. Centrist liberals and progressives widely agree that the unprecedented direct interventions by our government used to stabilize the economy and protect vulnerable citizens during the pandemic were in fact beneficial. We propped up our economy with stimulus checks, expanded unemployment insurance and paycheck protection, plus eviction moratoria and rental assistance. We gave aid to the needy with the enhanced child tax credits, universal free school meals, and student loan pauses. We cared for the sick and the vulnerable with Medicaid continuous enrollment and telehealth, and made testing materials easily accessible. Many of us trusted science in vaccine development, and we happily relied on public-private partnerships for distribution. We even celebrated our immigrants publicly, probably for the first time in U.S. history, as essential workers. We've done similar and greater to lesser degrees in the deep past. One of my UUSJ stakeholders likes to remind me that it's not all doom and gloom. She says, I'm a very serious guy and I tend to come across as all doom and gloom, but that every leap forward is made of many baby steps. She reminds me that things do progress, sometimes like a game of hopscotch. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 move to the right, 2 to the left, 1 back, then forward, sometimes 4, back again, forward again. She reminds me that she was raised in the segregated South. But things have progressed. Desegregation came, voting rights arrived, educational opportunities followed, greater workplace equity for women took hold. She was able to become a lawyer and have a career in both public service and private practice. No, it's never been perfect or equitable, but it has improved. Things are moving sideways and back now, but her life is the proof that compounding incremental progress is possible. More things were reported in our work. I'm not going to go into them. As Unitarian Universalists, we're not alone in our calls for caring. Hinduism asserts the world is one family and calls us to act for the welfare of the world. Buddhism states all tremble at violence, all fear death, and teaches that right action avoids harm and promotes well-being. These are essential human insights about the nature of our being and our human condition. Yet, the richest 1% are receiving billions. How does that advance our spirit of equity? We're making moral choices as a society that are wrong-headed. We must oppose these choices and work to confront them and unspool them, and that is the social conflict before us. Greed is good, must be overcome by mutual care for the great human family. So much of the ideology and the rhetoric we oppose wraps itself in patriotism or uses the language of faith to gain legitimacy and authority. And we've seen this stuff before in the United States. We know it as propaganda, false solutions for root harms and misdirections from root causes. Faith is no excuse for neglect, indifference, cruelty, or hate. Our sacred texts and religious traditions do not teach division. They preach the power of invitation to widen our circle of concern, to bridge hearts and minds with compassion and mercy, that we're all sacred and therefore all connected and all merit protection and help. That is the spirit of transformation at work. At our best, we're responsible to each other and for each other, not as an expression of pity, but in deference to the spirit of generosity. Now, I left out wrath in that litany of excuses that are used because I'm incensed with the direction we're going. I'm frightened by what our leaders are doing and what our courts are deciding. And I, for one, was taught that outrage in the face of injustice is not wrong. Fury with oppression and repression is not incorrect. There is such a thing as righteous anger in our tradition, and it can be the heartstone for change in spiritual discipline. It has formed the spine for abolition work and many other things. But those evils of neglect, indifference, and hate are something different than anger. Anger provides fuel. Those evils, they sort of twist the spirit. They're a means by which we render others into less than human. And every spiritual tradition seems to warn against that persistent evil. For my ears, Martin Luther King's expression puts it best. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. For me, this means that we must continue to resist injustice, ground our work in love, and refuse to see our spirits and our movements perverted by those evil tendencies. Rooting our movements in courage and love, movements that prick the conscience, movements that motivate to action, that is why people of faith across the country are banding together. At least on this matter of H.R. 1. It's our turn to rise. It's our time to bend the arc. We're going to make the world a better place because in our tradition, We proclaim the beloved community. We cherish and hold the sacred and great human family. We are radically inclusive. We embrace the idea of a world that is as it might. We embrace the idea of a world as it might be, as it ought to be, a product of imagination and spirit that flows through us and out into the world with our actions. It's not something descending from on high or floating in from the ether, but the real consequence of work by human hands, our motion pursuing a path towards a better tomorrow. We are powered by the spirit of life and love. We are a working faith. We face harms. We work with others to discover answers. We collaborate to bring solutions into being. We join and power movements of like minds. We will covenant for our future. And it's my good news for you that in the work of building that beloved community and rolling back the harms, we have the tools we need. Tools that have been developed and taught over generations among communities of faith and enriched by the larger labor movement in the United States. Saul Alinsky, a well-known figure in church organizing spaces, was the first to begin adapting the tools of union organizing into houses of worship through the IAF. And you guys know this. You have a Alinsky-aligned organization active in Virginia. I think its voice is still operating. Unless you think that the sort of concepts of community organizing and the modes of engagement are totally outdated or passé. Remember that uptick in cross-party voter collaboration during these primaries on data centers? The reporting suggests that it's the old school community organizing functioning in the background to give that some gas. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Greens, Democratic Socialists, all coming together to object to the moral injury on data centers and to require accountability from elected officials. I contend that that's what we wanted in 2024 in general for our democracy, and that it's what we're going to need if we're going to get to restoring voting rights or defending trans folks or reining in ICE. And yes, I think we set the bar high because we want more than just law and order to protect us as we move along in our democracy. We also want peace and tranquility to pervade. We also want authentic participation and inclusion. We want a republic that is in fact a healthy democracy. So in closing, I just want to invoke the spirit of pluralism. Let us sort of pray together with our imaginations. Let's envision a different future. That same small town now flourishing. It's a few years off, but not so far off we can't see it. New industry and light manufacturing have arrived because we put wise incentives in place, framed policies that put people at the center. They're making things that contribute to a wholesale greening of the economy and an embrace of sustainable ways. Or maybe they're doing something completely different. Maybe they're a fashion hub or a tech hub or a crafting hub. Who knows? The jobs are returning. The pay supports a good life. The people can work with dignity. Family-age people are moving back, eager to raise their children in the town. No school fears closure for lack of students. Homes are being improved, rebuilt, and modified where possible because we made that feasible and within reach. They're now better made. Built for storms and elevated or removed from flood zones. The ecosystem is adjusting. The hollers are less treacherous. The air and water are cleaner. The coal industry denuded hilltops are regrowing their trees because we have effective programs to support that outcome. And that's not all. New migrant families are arriving. Their accents may differ, their food may be spicy, and initially they're strangers, but they are welcomed. Folks are confident in our immigration system because we made dignity and compassion its organizing principle. They find work alongside the locals. They open small businesses all alongside the locals. Their children attend school alongside the locals. They are becoming locals. They remain connected to their motherland and roots, and nobody thinks that's strange or inappropriate, and to the contrary, it's pleasing and viewed as an opportunity. A place that was dying and rusting out is vibrant and flush with life once again. New friendships, new businesses, new possibilities. The folks who live in this new old town believe their well-being, their fortunes, their prospects are interconnected. They feel their community is strong. They believe their nation is doing well. They regard their society as remarkable in its own specific ways. They do not fear the future. It is great to be alive now. This, my friends, is not a daydream. These are the stakes in November. These are the stakes for the next 2 to 3 governing cycles, at minimum, if the math plays out. We must lay the groundwork with our voices and our votes now and get into it during the next session of Congress. The accountability of work begins now, it goes through the midterms, and it continues into the lame duck and then into the next session of Congress. And unless God sends the right math and we have veto-proof majorities, it means we're going to be doing this work in the next 2 or even 3 cycles. We must do the organizing now for the long haul. So join me as we covenant for the future, because that's what I'm talking about when I say we need to covenant for the future. It's about, are we going to get serious about the long ball game? But it begins with voter education and mobilization. And I understand that you're going to have some good troublemaking this afternoon around some of those issues. So thank you, Accotink. Blessings and peace to you. May it be so. Amen. Ashe. Amateo.
Please rise now in body or spirit and join in our closing words. If you are comfortable taking hands, please do. And if you are on Zoom at home, I know it sounds silly, but trust me, put your hands out toward the screen. And we are going together to say the words that are on the screen. This church is dedicated to the proposition that there is unity beneath all our diversity, that we grow together by celebrating our differences, honoring a journey that reaches beyond time, death, and the space between the stars. Then we'll now silent witness to our shared covenant. And as I look out and see everyone's hands, many of whom are clasped with others, fills my heart with joy. And I hope that your hearts are also filled with joy. Now that we've gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, let us go out into the world, inspired to share our values. Blessed be, peace to all. Have a lovely day and week.